The 23rd chapter of the book of Divrei Hayamim Beruf Shana Shvit Chazak Yoyada Vayikach Tzarei Meot Lazaria ben Yerocham Lishmael ben Yochanan Lazario ben Oved vet Masiyahu ben Adayahu vet Elishafat ben Zichri Imo Bavrit. So now it's the 7th year of the reign of Atalia, who's killed off all of the heirs to the Davidic was killed either in battle or was killed by Yehu ben Nimshi when he was brought to him. Different, of course, recordings of how exactly the story happened here in Chronicles and back in the book of Kings. But she kills everybody. The queen mother becomes queen. And now it's 7th year of that reign. And Yehoyada, who is the high priest, who a wet nurse or a sister brought this young baby, Yoash, to Yehoyada. He was hidden away in the palace, in the Beit Hashem, I shouldn't say in the palace of God, in the Beit Hashem, in the Beit HaMikdash, as we call it, for a number of years. And so now it's the 7th year in Yehoyada. And he brings chiefs, different chiefs, Azariah, Yishmael, another Azariah, Maasiyah, Elishafat, all with theophoric names, all people with names relate with an idea of God. And he comes and he makes a brit with them. And what is the brit? And then these men, they get sent out all over Yehuda, and they bring all of the Levim from all of the towns and all the heads of the clans, and they come to Yerushalayim. Vayichrot kol hakal brit bebeit Elohim Elimelech vayomer lahem. So it was not set up to this point, as then they reveal that there is a Davidic heir. There is somebody from the Davidic dynasty, Yoash, who remains alive, and all of these Leviim, along with Yehoyada and Azaryahu and Michayahu, the people who were helping him, they come into a covenant and they say, the son of the king shall be king according to the promise of God made with concern to the family, the sons of David. So this is what do. Levites who are on duty for the week shall be gatekeepers at the thresholds. Okay, so we saw this earlier in this book that David makes 24 different mishmarot, 24 different divides the Leviim and the Kohanim, the families, into 24 different groups, and each group will work approximately 2 weeks a year, in addition to, let's say, the holidays when it was busier. So that's what it's referring to. These the third of the priests and Levites who are on duty for this specific week, 1/3 of them will be at the gate. Beit Adonai. And 1/3 of you will be stationed at the royal palace, and another 1/3 at the foundation gate, and all the people will be in the courts of the house of God, right? All the people are going to be here in the Beit HaMikdash. V'al yavo Beit Adonai ki ma'kohanim, we're in Pasuk Vav, verse 6, V'amishartim levim hema yavo ki kodesh hema v'chol ha'am yishmru mishmeret Adonai. No one should enter the Beit HaMikdash, the house of God, except the priests and the Levites. They may enter because they are sanctified. They have this special sanctity. But all the people shall obey the prescription of the Lord, right? So it's only going to be the Kohanim and Levim, the Beit HaMikdash. Of course, there are other people allowed in the Beit HaMikdash, but on this day, for whatever reason, this is the rule that's being done. Of course, it is all just it's not, they're not changing the halacha, they're not having a religious revolution, they're just doing this so they can protect and proclaim Yoash king. V'hikifu alavim et hamelech saviv ish v'chela biado v'abal habayit yumat v'ayu et hamelech b'vo v'tzeito. The Levites will surround the king on every side, every man with his weapons at the ready, and whoever enters the house of God will be killed. Stay close to the king in his comings and his going, when he comes in and when he goes out. And so they do that. Vayasu alavim v'chol Yudah k'chol asher tziva Yehoyada kohen v'yichu ish et anashav b'yei hashabat yotzei hashabat ki lo fatar Yehoyada kohen et hamach lekot. And they followed the Levites and all of Yehuda. It can't be, everybody, not everybody, but right, especially the emphasis here is on the Leviim, on the sanctity of the Leviim, the Kohanim, the Beit HaMikdash. Not surprised, that's what we've seen over and over again here in the book of Divrei Hayamim. Everybody did as Yehoyada, the high priest, had ordered. and each person had his group of men with him that were in his battalion or whatever, and those were on duty that week, and those who were off duty that week, right? They followed what Yehoiada had done, because he had not dismissed the divisions, meaning he left it on the day. He did it on presumably the day that the work ended and maybe the work started, and so if there would be double the amounts of Levium than usually would be there. The priest gave the chiefs of the hundreds King David's spears and shields and quivers that were kept in the house of God, right? So these belong to David and they should be given, because this, of course, we're putting a descendant of the Davidic dynasty back on the throne. Vayam made at Kol Ha'am, we're in verse 10, Pasuk Yud, V'ish shilchov yado miketef habayit haminit ad ketef habayit hasmul l'mizbech v'labayit al hamelech saviv. He stationed the entire force, each man with his weapons at the ready, from the south to the north, at the altar, to the guard, right on every side there were kings there. Vayotziot ben hamelech. And here's the big moment. Now they bring out the young king, the son of the king. He was so young, he called him Ben HaMelech. Vaynu alav et hanezer v'et ha'edut vayamlichu oto vayimashchuhu Yehoyada uvanav vayomru Yichi HaMelech. They bring him out, and they place the crown on him, and they place some sort of insignia, some sort of testimony, whatever it is, the edut, proclaiming him as king, and they say that as much. And they shout, "Long live the king." They anoint him with oil, which is something that we have not seen since the time period for the Davidic dynasty, as far as I know, since Shlomo, because the dynasty and the succession was very simple. Went to the oldest son. This is the first time there was a major break in the possible succession, obviously, a major break in it. And so here we go back and we have the anointing of the king. Now, there is already a woman who is playing queen. Vatishma Ataliyahu et kol ha'am haratzim v'malalim et hamelech latavo el ha'am beit Adonai. So Atalia, here's a big commotion. Something's going on. There's all this loud noise. There's all this screaming. She's not clear exactly what it was. And she goes to the house of God. She goes to the Beit HaMikdash, where this noise is coming from. Vatera, v'nei hamelech omeid al amudo, Bimavo v'hasarim v'chatzotzrot al hamelech kol ha'am haaretz sameach v'tokea b'chatzotzrot v'mishorim b'chli hashir modim la'alel v'tikra Atalyahu et bigadeh v'tomer kesher kasher. She looks around and everybody's joyous. They're happy. They're playing instruments. They're rejoicing. They're singing. It doesn't say they're dancing, but maybe they're doing that also. There's all sorts of singing and joy and musical instruments. Atalia sees it and she screams out, treason, treason. She says, right, rebellion. This is a kesher. What's going on here? I'm the queen. She tears her garments. Vayotze Yehoyada Kohen etzarei meot b'kdei achayil vayomer aleim hotzi uha el mibeit hasderot v'haba acharei yumat becharev ki amar Kohen lo timitua beit Adonai. The priest calls out to the army officers and the different chiefs and said to them, take her out right between the ranks. If anyone follows her, put him to the sword. And now, why are we removing her? Why are we not just killing her on the spot? Because this is the Beit HaMikdash, this is the Beit Hashem. This is not the place to kill somebody. They cleared a passage for her and brought her to the horse gate to the royal palace. And they put her to death there. And so the short reign, 7 years too long, of Atalia and her wickedness has come to a very quick end here in this chapter. But the chapter continues. Yehoyada makes a covenant between himself and the people of the king that they should what? They should follow. They should be the people of God. They should follow Hashem. Tsuhu v'et mizbachotav v'et tzlamav shiberu v'et matan kohen habal hargu lifnei hamizbachot. And what do? They go down to the temple of Baal, they rip it down, they smash it into smithereens, and they kill Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Vayasem Yehoyada pekudot Beit Adonai biad hakohanim ha'levim asher chalak David al Beit Adonai la'alot olot Adonai k'katuv b'Torah Moshe b'simcha v'shir al yedei David. Yehoyada places officers in the house of God in charge of the Leviim, and from the Leviim, from the different, we mentioned earlier, from the different divisions that King David had done over the time they would work in the Beit HaMikdash, and they were doing that which it said in the Torah Moshe to do in the Beit HaMikdash, the different sacrifices, etc., etc. And of course, it was accompanied by joyful songs ordained by David, what we call the Tehillim, Vayamed Ashoarim, Al Sharei Beit Adonai V'lo Yavo Tamei L'chol Davar. The gatekeepers of the house of God were there to prevent the entry of anyone unclean for any reason. A verse that's showing, of course, the sanctity of the Mikdash. Right, you have to be fully sacred to go into the Mikdash, and if you don't, then you are not allowed there. ויקח את שרי המאות ואת האדירים ואת המושלים בעם ואת כל עם הארץ וירד את המלך מבית אדוני ויבוא בתוך השער העליון בית המלך וישיבו את המלך על כיסא הממלכה. He took different chiefs and rulers of the different clans from all over, and they escorted the king down from the Beit HaMikdash to the palace by the upper gate, and they placed him on the throne. Vayismechu chol am haaretz, v'ha'ir shakata, v'tatalia hemitu v'charev. All the people were joyous, and there was peace. The city was quiet, and we know Atalia, she was taken care of. She had been put to the sword. She had been killed, and so this is an important chapter. Davidic dynasty, God said, is going to reign forever. It didn't look like it was going to happen. And we may have pointed out at some time, I don't know if we have, right? We've certainly pointed out when the second Beit HaMikdash started, Zerubbabel, as mentioned in Ezra, as mentioned in Haggai, is the political leader. He's a direct descendant of Yechoniah. He's a direct descendant of King David. During the Second Temple period and in the aftermath of the Second Temple period, the Nisim, Hillel, and onwards, they are descendants of King David. And so this is a few year period where descendant of King David is not in charge of his kingdom, and but it's restored, and it's restored here by the hard work of the priests and the Levites and the importance and centrality of the Mikdash, and highlighting the Levites in this book more than in the book of Melachim. We sort of highlight the Leviim and anybody else. The one sort of big difference that we have in terms of the account in the account here and the account there. Here, as usual, it's more theological. It's more, the focus is on the Leviim and the Kohanim, as opposed to sort of the military guards. They're mentioned here as well, but here it's, of course, not surprisingly, much more about much more that theological spin. Atalia is overthrown. It's the restoration of God's order, God's renewal of the covenant that God had with David, just like we overturning of the Babylonian kingdom and the restoration of the Jewish people back to Jerusalem, etc., etc. It's much more of, as we've seen the whole time, that theological shift, as opposed to the more religious way of it happening. So we have here the restoration, like we said, of Yoash. Yoash is now the king, and it's a great moment for the Jewish people, the kingdom of David, because now they have been given back their true king, and the Davidic dynasty will continue to reign as God has requested as God has promised David for all of these years will happen.